everyone. My name is Pam Barkley and I am the Director of Educational Training at Moving Traditions. Moving Traditions is a mission-driven organization, and our mission is to embolden teens by fostering self-discovery, challenging sexism, and inspiring a commitment to Jewish life and learning. And we do that in a myriad of ways across a whole range of programs, starting with B'nai Mitzvah, when our preteens are working with their families, straight through our teen groups that hopefully go straight through 12th grade when they graduate and go off to college. I'm joined here by Rabbi Daniel Brenner and Rabbi Tamara Cohn. Thank you for being here. They're going to help explain a little bit about how our programs work. We have 3 different teen programs operating right now: Rosh Chodesh for self-identified teenage girls, Shevet for self-identified teenage boys, and Selem, our newest online group for non-binary youth who want to meet in that kind of environment. So, first and foremost, 3 different groups, different gendered kinds of groups. So why different gendered spaces? What's behind that, especially given today's world?
It's a great question, because on one level we are feeling that we are beyond gender, and certainly many teens are feeling that way and are identifying in lots of different ways around gender and feel a sense of fluidity and wanting to be together. And yet we also recognize that gender norms are alive and well and affecting the daily lives of teens online and in person in ways that can be harmful and deserve space to reflect on, talk about, examine, and challenge. And so we believe that it's really important to still have set aside time, 2 hours a month, to meet in gender-specific groups with people who share your gender identity, to unpack some of those messages that are coming at you all the time around what are you supposed to be doing and liking, and how are you supposed to be moving through the world if you identify as a girl, or if you identify as a boy, or if you identify as non-binary. What parts of that do you want to hold on to and value, and what parts of that do you want to push up against and change, and that doing that in a community of like-minded, like-gendered people and friends is really going to be a helpful way at reaching health and happiness as a teenager and eventually as an adult.
Yeah, I think it's particularly important for teen boys because I think that when teen boys are in a mixed gender environment, maybe they'll say, yes, I think sexism is bad, I think it's not so great. But then when they're with their guy friends, they maybe will laugh at something that is sexist, or they will dismiss something that is sexist, or even worse, perpetuate something that is sexist. And being in a environment with other self-identified guys and hearing, no, actually it's part of our responsibility to challenge sexism, because sexism is bad for us, it is bad for all people, and it's something that we can push back against. That's an incredibly healthy message. So I think that's a big part of why, particularly at this stage of adolescent development, ages 14 and 15, there was a lot of research by the late Stanford professor Sandra Bem saying that this particular stage of teenage life is one when gender questions and looking at others for do I fit in with my gender become really important. So that's why, as Tamara said, that these 2 hours a month really play an important role in the life of a teenager.
So there's a lot of things going on in the life of a teenager, and how do you see them as being differently handled in these different gender groups? Can you give me an example of an issue that might be seen from a different perspective depending on your gender?
Sure, we know that stress and anxiety are up for kids of all, for teens of all genders, and that there's a lot of pressure to succeed academically and to achieve. And we also know that those play into different tropes for those socialized as boys and those socialized as girls. So there might be more of a competition status piece of it, and difficulty in asking for help that you'll see among boys, and among girls, a pressure to be perfect, to hide how much work actually went into something and not talk about the levels of stress and depression that are occurring and rising among girls, so that it's the same issue, but it's experienced differently and comes up against different gender norms or plays into different gender norms, and so it's helpful to talk about it separately.
I would add that there's also a fair amount of segregation in digital worlds. I always joke that girls are taught to care for and feed unicorns, and boys are taught to kill unicorns. And it's not like there's somebody trying to manipulate them. It's just there are lots of targeted games, and when I would say even before they're teenagers, even when younger children are starting to get into digital environments, they're entering often into very gender-coded heavy environments, and giving them a space where they can talk about how they're supposed to be in a digital environment and what gender codes are happening in a digital environment, I think can be really incredibly healthy.
So what do we hope to achieve in these groups? What are the outcomes that you're looking for in any of these groups?
That's a good question. So we start off with something that is very basic, and that is that we would like for every teenager to have this experience that I have a voice, and I can push back against the pressures, whether they're cultural pressures or pressures around a gender norm or gender code, and I will be supported by a group of people who are also pushing back against those pressures. And I think that for each one of our group leaders, the question that they are focused on is making sure that each individual teenager is thinking, what do I need to grow? And like asking that question again and again in multiple different ways on multiple different topics. So I think the first thing is just basically starting with that self-esteem and self-confidence and finding your voice. And then the other things that the program focuses on are friendship and building bonds and connections to other teenagers, which happen naturally in our groups in all sorts of wonderful ways. And lots of times teenagers say in our groups, I didn't realize I would be friends with that kind of person, but now because of this group, I'm friends with different kinds of people, and that is incredibly wonderful. And the third thing is for teenagers to experience the Jewish community and the flow of the Jewish community in terms of rituals and seasonal cycles and a Jewish ritual that brings people together. And one of the things that we really look for, and when we do evaluation of our programs, we look for teenagers saying the Jewish stuff really spoke to me personally, and I found a Jewish community in this group. And luckily, our programs are doing that, but like that's really a testament to the incredible work of group leaders who make that happen.
We also know that being in the groups helps teens feel that they can be part of making change in the world, specifically around issues of sexism and gender, but also more generally, and that's the thrust of the program. And as in the past few years, we have relaunched the program, specifically Rosh Chodesh and Shevet, and then created Selem. We've been doing a lot of research and very focused on what are the current issues in the lives of 8th grade girls, 8th grade boys, 9th grade boys, 9th grade girls, non-binary teens, and that's all woven into the monthly curriculum. So thinking about looking at all of the specific challenges and areas for growth, because it's really built also around the social and emotional learning and development and the skills that they're not getting in school or in other contexts.
Right. Okay, so I'm sold, right? I'm sold. So now I want to know, I'm going to come to this training, and what makes this training different? Like, what can I expect at this training?
It's a good thing to be prepared for, because you're coming both to a training that is going to teach you a lot about the curriculum and familiarize yourself with the modalities that we use in our groups. It's also going to give you an opportunity to practice what it's like to be a group leader with group of teens that might be easy one day and challenging another day, and give you really a chance to practice that and gain wisdom from the other people in the room. It's also going to be an opportunity for you to look at some of the issues yourself, because we recognize that you're going to be a mentor for teens, and part of being a mentor is doing your own work and reflection so that you can be an authentic role model in people's lives. Not a role model of someone who's perfect and done with all the issues, but someone who's been thinking about them a little bit longer and working through the issues of what does it mean to be a man or a woman or a non-binary adult in the world, and can share that wisdom. And also, how do you live your Jewish identity? We talk a lot about boundaries too, and not oversharing, but using yourself, having that opportunity for reflection, and also for community building among the people there, so that in a sense you're going to have your own little Rosh Chodesh or Shevet group of group leaders to support you and to draw from their stories and experiences when you're going back home and leading your group.
Yeah, we split the training time in between everybody, all genders together, talking about our shared mission and our shared educational goals, and really our vision for the Jewish community, and time when we are gender separate in the training to go deeper in some of these issues around socialization, to really challenge some of the things that we are bringing into the room as mentors. I think that we strive to learn from everybody who comes from the training, and to create an environment which emphasizes that there are many different ways to do this well. There are many different models for a great group leader, many different models for mentorship, and that's just part of what it's like to be part of a group of people working on something together, and to know that there are a couple hundred other people doing exactly what you're doing, working with teenagers with the same curriculum and trying to like really foster this change. It's an incredible feeling to feel part of that group, and that's what training really starts to create.
So this all sounds great, but what makes this Jewish? So, right, this could be any sort of boys group or girls group or non-binary group. What makes this Jewish?
So I'm going to give the answer from history first. So I'm very interested in the strain within Judaism that focuses on character development and personal growth. And depending on what text you want to look at, you could either trace this all the way back to Torah, or most people trace it back to more of the philosophical tradition and to folks who were writing in the 11th and 12th century, Maimonides and others. And that is a tradition that has continued. There's part of the Jewish, I would say, philosophical tradition called Musar, which is a self-reflective practice. So we're drawing from this one particular path, which doesn't always get so much, I would say, spotlight on the stage of Jewish life, but we're drawing from that and pairing it with what we've learned from psychology and positive youth development, and what we've learned from feminist theory, and what we've learned just about the ways in which teenagers are changing every year and reacting to what's happening in the news and reacting to the world. And we integrate all of that in the pedagogic model that we train on. And I think that is deeply Jewish. It's deeply Jewish to like take the seeds from the past and take the things that are of the moment and try to hold them together. And that to me is like the Jewish piece of it, in addition to some other more explicit ways that is Jewish.
Yeah, our teen groups, part of the origin of them is that we were looking for a way for Jewish teens to stay engaged in Jewish life in a way that is actually meaningful, where it feels like, oh, I get it, this is relevant to the issues that I'm dealing with as an adolescent. It's actually helpful. And we know that from research that it is actually helpful to be connected to a spiritual or religious community. And so that's a very important part of Rosh Chodesh and Shevet and Salem. And that's by bringing Jewish wisdom. It's also by bringing the Jewish process of being critical and continuing to interpret and wrestle with our tradition, the parts of it that we love and the parts of it that are more difficult, particularly for us around gender, and using that as an opportunity to learn those tools, which can be applied in the Jewish world and outside of the Jewish world. And also a key part of our groups is the ritual that opens and closes groups. In Rosh Chodesh groups, that involves lighting a candle and marking the beginning of the month with Rosh Chodesh, and that's a part that we know participants really love and feel connected to, and gives them a tool that they can use for the rest of their lives for creating meaning and connection and stopping and reflecting, and in that way marking Jewish time and feeling that in that way they're contributing to Jewish life, and that Jewish life is a source of goodness and a positive source in their life and in the world.
Thank you. Thank you both for sharing your thoughts with me for the upcoming training.